When we formally met, she had just become president. It was in 2006 when she came here for her big address to a joint session of Congress. I'd known about her all my life
What did
because
you
she
know?
was,
What did you know about her?
She became famous. Well, she was Minister of Finance
Right.
in 1979, 1980 when the coup happened. So at that time, I'm 13, 14. Of course, I knew who the Minister of Finance was. She knew my parents. And so they were, she was somebody that, as a child growing up in Liberia, I had heard of. She was always speaking truth to power. She was always, criticizing the same government that she worked for. And then in 1985, when she was arrested and thrown into jail by Samuel Doe, I heard all about that. And she became, at this time, sort of a political icon. She was this really bad. I was about to say a bad word. Yeah, I was going to say.
I know what was coming next.
I know. She was this tough Angela Davis, Afro, political, fighting, talking truth to power. And she was jailed by Doe, and she wasn't going to bend. And he was trying to get her to take the Senate seat.
Yep,
she wouldn't
she
do
wasn't
it.
going to do it. After she won the Senate seat.
After she won it. She's pretty stubborn.
Well, and I think I remember seeing a picture in here of her, and it certainly reminded me of the 60s, actually, where she gets out of prison. And she
That's
comes
in
out and
1986.
she's holding her
she's
fist
like,
up and wearing that T-shirt that said something militant
Peace and
on
shalom
it. Yeah, right.
on it. And she's got the dreadlocks, and she looks like Rasta when she gets out of jail.
And I've known her for a few years, and that's where I know her as the elegant state woman.
She's
Madam
so reserved
President.
now. You see,
So
you've
to
met
imagine her
yeah.
then.
It's so hilarious because you've met her, so you know how when you
Right.
first meet her, she comes across as so reserved.
Exactly.
She seems very standoffish, and then you put that together with the,
Right.
it's great.
Absolutely. Well, I also imagine when you were talking about you knew her as Minister of Finance, wasn't she the only woman that had a position that high in the country?
Liberia, at the time, I think she was the only woman in the cabinet in 1979, 1980. She was certainly the first woman to be in such a high position. But Liberia has always been, it's a very patriarchal place,
Right.
but there've always been a handful of women up in higher levels of government. But as she was a female Minister of Finance, and in 1979, that was a pretty big deal.
Well, a few things that were fascinating to me. Again, I knew a little bit about her past in terms of that she had worked for the World Bank, the IMF. She, was a Harvard-trained economist. And the way that you describe in the book, that she systematically built those relationships with the international finance community. Yeah. And I wonder if she had it in her mind. I mean, you talk about in the very beginning, she knew she was destined for something. But I wonder if she had it in the back of her mind always that she would wind up being president, because she strategically used those relationships to deal with the debt that Liberia was facing. And I don't think anybody else would have been able to have done that.
No, I don't think anybody else could have gotten Liberia's debt. When she came into office, Liberia's had $4.7 billion debt.
Which was unfair to begin with.
Yes. Was about to be kicked out of the IMF, was about to, couldn't qualify for anything. And the country was this post-war apocalyptic mess at this point. It had been through 15 years of civil war, 23 years of gross financial mismanagement, and the place was a wreck. And because she had these international contacts and she had this background, she was uniquely qualified to begin the process and to get this debt forgiven. So that was a big deal. I've asked her many times, when did you decide that you wanted to run for president? And
Right.
I've never gotten a good answer from her. It's something that sort of, evolved for her. But I think it started, a long time ago. I think it started back when she left her abusive husband.
Yeah.
She was a victim of domestic abuse. She got married at 17. By the time she was 21, she had 4 boys. And 4 boys, under the age of, 4 or 5. And she left them and came to the United States. She left them with her mother and her mother-in-law, and came to the United States to get her associate's degree. And that started, then went back to Liberia and started working for the Ministry of Finance. But that was the moment. She was one of a very few handful of women, working in the debt division for the Ministry of Finance in the 1960s. You can imagine this was a very male-dominated area. And I think that sort of started back then. You know, her husband, she had fights with her husband, and he was very abusive. She started an affair with another Liberian
That was
man.
pretty shocking.
Yeah, that was
that was pretty bold.
Yeah, in the 1960s.
He drove up to the house. Her husband drove up to the house
and caught them. Yeah, and there
she was lucky
and
she
beat
made
her
it out
in
of that.
Yeah. But she finally walked out, you know, on doxer leave, and took control of her life in like the middle 1960s. Which women, you think back to then.
Oh no,
women didn't.
Absolutely
not. Women didn't really do that. You sort of took it. So she was pretty extraordinary from the get go.